Hello everyone, welcome to biology class. Our topic for today is gaseous exchange in humans. So here are our objectives. By the end of this video, I hope you will be able to explain the gaseous exchange between the lungs and the blood, the transport of respiratory gases from lungs to tissues, the gaseous exchange between the blood and the tissues, and the transport of respiratory gases from tissues to the lungs. Okay, so before we move further into the main contents of the topic, first we need to understand what is partial pressure. You will come across these phrases frequently in this subtopic. So what is partial pressure? Partial pressure is the pressure exerted by that particular gas. In this lesson, we only focus on the partial pressure of carbon dioxide and partial pressure of oxygen. Partial pressure is important to allow gases exchange. Gas can only diffuse when there is a difference of partial pressure between two areas. The gas diffuses from an area of high partial pressure to an area of low partial pressure, or in other words, known as down a partial pressure gradient. Okay, so what is the partial pressure of oxygen and carbon dioxide? Let's find out. The atmospheric pressure at sea level is 760 millimeters of mercury. So to calculate the pressure of a gas in the atmospheric pressure, we can use this formula. The percentage of the gas in the air multiplied by 760 millimeters of mercury. So recall what you have learned in your lower form. What is the percentage of the oxygen in the atmosphere? The atmosphere consists of 21% of oxygen. So by using this formula, the partial pressure of oxygen at sea level is 160 millimeter of mercury. What about the partial pressure of carbon dioxide? Okay, the partial pressure of carbon dioxide at sea level is 0.23 millimeter of mercury. Alright, so that is the brief introduction on partial pressure. Now, the picture shown here is to illustrate how oxygen gas is inhaled, begins from the nose down to the trachea, the bronchus, bronchiole, and finally into the tiny air sac called the alveoli. Remember the previous subtopic? Alveoli are surrounded with dense network of blood capillaries. Okay, so this one here shows the blood circulatory system in the human body. So this part at this region is the blood that has high concentration of oxygen, meaning has high partial pressure of oxygen and low carbon dioxide concentration. This blue part here is the blood that has high carbon dioxide concentration and low oxygen concentration. So, how does gaseous exchange occurs between the lungs and the blood? Let's say the blood moves in this way. So here is the blood that is coming from all parts of the body. So it has high carbon dioxide content. In the lungs, blood that enters the lung capillaries contain a higher pressure of carbon dioxide compared to alveolus. So carbon dioxide diffuses out from the lung capillaries and into the alveolus. At the same time, the partial pressure of oxygen in the alveolus is higher than the lung capillaries. So oxygen diffuses into the lung capillaries and combine with the hemoglobin in the erythrocyte or red blood cell, to form oxyhemoglobin. So oxygen is carried in the form of oxyhemoglobin throughout our blood circulatory system. The carbon dioxide just now that enters the alveolus will be expelled into the atmosphere through nose and mouth. Okay, so this shows the gas exchange that occurs between the lung capillaries and the blood. So the blood that leaves the lungs through the pulmonary vein has a high partial pressure of oxygen and a low partial pressure of carbon dioxide. Alright, the second part is we learn how gaseous exchange occurs between the blood and the tissue. So when the blood reaches the tissue, the partial pressure of oxygen in the blood is higher than that of the body cells. This is because cellular respiration uses oxygen. So oxyhemoglobin breaks down and oxygen diffuses from the tissue capillaries into the body cell. The body cells then undergo cellular respiration and thus releasing carbon dioxide. So the partial pressure of carbon dioxide in the body cell is higher than the tissue capillaries. So carbon dioxide diffuses out from the body cell into the tissue capillaries and is transported back to the lungs. Okay, here shows you the gas exchange that occurs between the tissue capillaries and the blood. The blood that enters the lung through the pulmonary artery has a low partial pressure of oxygen but high partial pressure of carbon dioxide. Okay, this one shows you additional information on hemoglobin. So hemoglobin is the protein molecules in the red blood cells that carries oxygen. So one hemoglobin molecules can bring up to 4 molecules of oxygen. So a single red blood cell, okay, contains about 250 million of hemoglobin molecules. So can you imagine that in single red blood cell can carry trillions, zillions of oxygen at one time. Okay. Alright, so this one shows you the oxygen molecules is actually binds to the iron in the hemoglobin molecule. Alright, so we have learned how oxygen is carried in the blood circulatory system, that is in the form of oxyhemoglobin. So now we will learn how carbon dioxide is transported back to the lung to be expelled during exhalation. So there are 3 ways in which carbon dioxide can be transported back to the lung. And that is 7% dissolved in blood plasma and carried as carbonic acid. 23% of carbon dioxide combined with the hemoglobin to form carbaminohemoglobin. And 70% of the carbon dioxide is transported in the blood in the form of bicarbonate ions. So we will look into this further. Alright, so how carbon dioxide is transported from the body cells to the tissue capillaries. So carbon dioxide released by the body cell is diffused into the blood plasma and eventually into the red blood cell. In the red blood cell, the carbon dioxide binds with the water to form carbonic acid. This reaction is catalyzed by carbonic anhydrase enzyme. The carbonic acid will then break down into bicarbonate ion and hydrogen ion. The bicarbonate ion then diffuses into the blood plasma and is carried in the bloodstream until it reaches the lungs. The hydrogen ions will bind with the hemoglobin and stay in the red blood cell. Okay. So once the blood reaches the lung, the reverse process happens. The bicarbonate ion in the blood plasma diffuse back into the red blood cell. The bicarbonate ion then combines again with the hydrogen ion to form carbonic acid. So carbonic acid then breaks down into carbon dioxide and water. So this reaction is catalyzed by the same enzyme, which is carbonic anhydrase. And then the carbon dioxide then diffuses through the lung capillaries into the alveolus and finally expelled during exhalation. Alright? Okay, so this diagram summarizes the transport of carbon dioxide in the blood in the form of bicarbonate ion. Okay, so here is the summary to what we have learned. Gases exchange between the lungs and the blood occurs at this region. So, the blood transported from the lungs through pulmonary vein and enters the heart has high partial pressure of oxygen but low partial pressure of carbon dioxide. So the heart then will do its job pumping the oxygenated blood to all parts of the body. Then gaseous exchange occurs between the blood and the body tissues because the body tissues undergo cellular respiration. So carbon dioxide is one of the byproducts that must be removed from our body. Therefore, the blood in this region has low partial pressure of oxygen but high partial pressure of carbon dioxide. And then we learn how carbon dioxide is transported back to the lungs. Right? So that's all for now. Stay tuned to more videos. Thank you and bye-bye.